Imagine walking down your local grocery aisle, reaching for a carton of milk, and watching in real time as the digital price tag flickers and suddenly doubles before your eyes. It's a jarring thought, right? This video is for educational purposes only and is not financial advice. We often view the economy as a massive, uncontrollable storm, but the truth is much more mechanical. While the people we elect to office are busy campaigning, shaking hands, and drafting new laws, they are notably absent from the room where the actual value of your hard-earned money is determined. There is a deliberate, invisible wall separating the ballot box from the printing press. Most people assume that if a politician wants to fund a new bridge or a tax cut, they just dial up the central bank and ask for more cash. You see, politicians are wired to win the next election, which usually means spending money to make people happy today, even if it hurts the economy tomorrow. If they held the reins to the currency, the temptation to print money to solve every political headache would be irresistible. That specific gap, that separation of power, is the only thing standing between our current reality and the chaos of hyperinflation. It is the silent guardian of your purchasing power. We are taught that elected officials should have control over every lever of government, but when it comes to the money in your wallet, that control would be a recipe for disaster. We have essentially outsourced the stability of our currency to a group of people who are specifically instructed to ignore the polls and focus on the long-term math. But how did this strange, detached system come to be? To understand why this independence is the bedrock of your financial security, we have to look behind the curtain at the quiet, high-stakes game that keeps the global economy from spinning off its axis. To answer that, we have to talk about the most powerful instinct in politics, the urge to win the next election. Your job depends on the public's approval, and that approval is almost always tied to how much money is in their pockets right now. If you control the printing press, you have a magic wand. Suddenly, businesses hire more people, home values climb, and the streets feel flush with cash. But here is the catch, and it's a brutal one. That influx of cash isn't real wealth. It's an artificial sugar high. It just dilutes the value of every dollar already in circulation. At first, everyone gets a bowl, but eventually, the broth is so thin it provides no nourishment at all. Without a neutral referee, the temptation to goose the economy for short-term gain is almost impossible to resist. Prices would soar, savings would evaporate, and the currency would lose the trust that gives it value in the first place. If you let the people holding the ballot box also hold the key to the vault, you're effectively asking a fox to guard the henhouse, not because the fox is evil, but because the fox is hungry. They need immediate results, visible wins, and happy constituents. It requires someone to say no when the crowd is shouting for more. That is the burden of the central bank. It's an unpopular job, and that's exactly the point. But even with that firewall in place, the pressure to compromise is constant, and the history of what happens when that wall crumbles is written in the wreckage of hyperinflation. Imagine a massive, circular vault door forged from cold-rolled steel and brushed titanium. On one side of this barrier lies the politics room. It is a space defined by the urgent, the immediate, and the temporary. It is a room built on ambition, where the horizon rarely stretches beyond the next 4 years. This space is quiet, precise, and deliberately detached from the noise. It is where the long-term health of our currency is calculated, not in votes, but in interest rates and liquidity. This is the mechanism of central bank independence. Think of this lock as a sophisticated gear system designed to prevent a dangerous cross-contamination. Politicians naturally want lower interest rates to fuel growth today, regardless of the inflationary hangover that might arrive tomorrow. The lock prevents this. It ensures that the person setting the price of money cannot be fired simply for making an unpopular decision that saves the economy from itself. It keeps the volatile, short-sighted atmosphere of the political arena from poisoning the precise, long-term calculations required to maintain the value of your savings. It is a frictionless separation, a way of saying that some things are too foundational to be subject to the whims of the day. But maintaining that lock requires constant vigilance. As we look at how this delicate machinery operates in the real world, we have to ask, what happens when the tension between these two rooms shifts from a managed distance to an active collision. To understand how that collision is avoided, we have to step inside the engine room of modern economics, the dual mandate. On one side, you have the goal of price stability, keeping the cost of your groceries and your rent from spiraling out of control. Think of it like steering a massive ship through a narrow, rocky channel. If you push the engines too hard to reach the harbor quickly, you risk overheating the machinery and crashing into the cliffs of inflation. This is where the concept of independence transforms from a dry textbook term into a genuine superpower. Politicians are often tethered to the short-term cycle of elections. They naturally prefer the immediate satisfaction of low interest rates, cheap money that fuels a quick boom, hides underlying weaknesses, and keeps voters happy. It feels great for a moment, but it leaves the structure charred and hollowed out in the long run. Raising interest rates is never popular. It makes borrowing expensive, it slows down the speculative frenzy, and it causes genuine discomfort for businesses and households alike. If the people controlling the money supply were beholden to the whims of the ballot box, they would never choose that pain. By insulating these decision-makers from the pressures of the next election cycle, we create a firewall. This distance allows them to prioritize the health of the currency over the popularity of the policy. It is a lonely, thankless position, but it is the only way to prevent the short-term impulses of the moment from dictating the long-term survival of the economy. It is a delicate trust, and that trust relies on one specific, invisible thread that connects the bank to the public it serves. That invisible thread is accountability. It's a compelling narrative, this idea of a shadowy cabal pulling the strings of the global economy from mahogany-paneled rooms. When the cost of living climbs and the value of your paycheck shrinks, it feels like someone, somewhere, must be responsible. But the reality is far more mundane, and perhaps more frustrating. Instead, there is a mountain of paperwork, endless committee hearings, and a rigid, transparent mandate written into law. The real tension isn't between a secret cabal and the people, it's between the immediate, fiery demands of politics and the cold, unyielding arithmetic of long-term stability. The passengers, the public, are terrified, but the captain knows that if they turn too sharply, the ship will capsize. This is the central bank's paradox. If a leader faces an election in 6 months, they have every incentive to print money, lower rates, and juice the economy to guarantee a win. By shielding the central bank from that electoral cycle, we aren't creating an unaccountable elite. We are saying that, for the sake of the currency's health, some decisions must be made by experts who don't have to worry about winning a popularity contest. It's a temporary delegation of authority, granted only as long as the bank remains tethered to its mandate. They exist in a state of perpetual audition, and that brings us to the most uncomfortable question of all. If they are doing their job perfectly, how would we even know? The fragile architecture of our global economy rests on a foundation thinner than most dare to imagine. The collective belief that the ink on our currency is backed by something more resilient than mere political convenience. When the veil of central bank independence is pulled back, we aren't just looking at charts or interest rate hikes. We are witnessing the delicate balancing act between short-term survival and the long-term integrity of our purchasing power. It is a living, breathing commitment that must be earned every single morning, and in a fiat system, it is the only thing standing between stability and the erosion of your life's work. You are the final auditor of this system. Monitoring their signals is not an act of paranoia. It is an act of stewardship. When you track the subtle shifts in their rhetoric, the quiet adjustments to balance sheets, and the underlying tension between governmental pressure and institutional autonomy, you are no longer a passive passenger in the economy. You become an informed participant, capable of navigating the currents rather than being swept away by them. You don't need to be a central banker to understand the direction of the wind. By sharpening your economic literacy, you learn to read the pressure points where political ambition clashes with fiscal reality. It allows you to anticipate the tides, to protect the value you have built, and to make decisions that prioritize your long-term autonomy over the fleeting noise of the daily news cycle. We have traversed the history of these institutions, unmasked the pressures that threaten to compromise them, and clarified why their independence is the bedrock of a predictable future. Remember, transparency is the only antidote to systemic decay. If this deep dive has helped you see the gears turning behind the curtain, you have already taken the first step toward true financial sovereignty. Knowledge is the ultimate leverage in an uncertain world. Your future is a project worth managing. Let's keep building the clarity you need to own it.